So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rick Vincent with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. I'm a design manager in the engineering and construction department. I've been an ACE mentor for 4 years, over a 5-year period, and I've been happy to do so. We're with the Collinwood High School, but this format is kind of neat because we get to interact with more schools. So we're going to just talk through some. I'm going to go through the agenda here. We'll flip through the agenda. There we go. Here's our agenda for today. We have a bunch of district employees on the video here and online that are going to talk to you mostly about stormwater and why stormwater management is important. We'll touch on some of the tunnels and combined sewer overflow, which is more of the sewer side of things, the sanitary sewer side of things, a little bit in the beginning here, but I'll do a little intro about what the sewer district is about, and then I'll kind of turn it over to Jeff Jowett, who's on the line here for a good bulk of the rest of the presentation. These are one of our watershed team leaders in our watersheds department. And then we're going to play a game. Jeff's going to walk us through that, and Allison's going to lead us through the game. Allison Schreiber, one of our other engineering construction department members. And we're all just going to pitch in through that. But it says discussions and questions at the end there, but feel free to jump in with questions, throw a question in the chat. We'll try to address it as we go. If anything comes up and you hear something you want to ask a question, do not be shy. And then at the end, there is a little bit of an assignment. It's real easy. Angela maybe can explain the assignment again like we did last time. Angela Jones, who is with our Administrative Affairs Department. Okay, let's get rolling here. So who is the sewer district? The first bullet there describes kind of what we are legally in the state of Ohio. We're called a political subdivision of the state of Ohio. What it basically means is that we're an entity that was created. You see that we were created by court order in 1972 when the Clean Water Act went into effect as well in the U.S. But we're a regional entity, meaning we're kind of cross borders across many cities, and we actually have 62 member communities that make up our region that we kind of manage the sewer and stormwater for. This is kind of a bullet list of the basic stuff we do. We have about 1 million customers. We have 3 wastewater treatment plants, and we treat 90 billion gallons of wastewater a year. And we maintain many, many miles of sewers that are in our system. And I'll a slide that shows that in a second. And we are responsible for combined sewer overflow control, which in a nutshell means when it rains and the rainwater in certain sewers will combine with sewage that's already in those sewers, and it could get out to the environment, the overflow. Jeff's going to go into more detail on that, so I'll let him explain that because he'll do probably a better job, even though I'm the CSO design manager. And then Jeff is also going to explain this next one, the regional stormwater management. Basically, the region we encompass not just for sewer, but also for stormwater management, because that's a regional issue. The streams don't care what city line they cross, so we have a regional responsibility there too. We do not have any drinking water responsibilities per se, like we're not Cleveland Water. We do not provide water to your tap. However, the water that we clean does end up ultimately in Lake Erie, which is where you're getting your drinking water from. So indirectly, we like to think that we contribute to the solution of keeping our water clean. So here's our service area. This is the area we cover on a map. I'm literally standing right here at the blue dot. Can you see me? I'm right there. And there's 3 other dots. Those are our 3 wastewater treatment plants. Easterly, westerly, and southerly. Very aptly named. There's no northerly because, of course, that would be out here in the middle of the lake somewhere. And the other thing to point out on this map is all the yellow lines. Those are our interceptor sewers. An interceptor is sort of a bigger sewer. It's the one that takes the local sewers from all the 62 members communities, and it ties those local sewers that those member communities manage into our interceptor sewers. Then that flow goes in those sewers to the treatment plant that's appropriate for nearby to those sewers. So that's how we treat the water before it gets discharged into the nearby water body, whether it's the Cuyahoga River or Lake Erie directly. And it covers about 365 square miles, so it's a pretty big area. But here's what I was talking about. The local sewers, you can see there's about 10 times as many local sewers in terms of linear feet. There's 3,100 miles of local sewers shown in green here. And all these green ones are connected to one of these, one or more of these yellow ones. So that's how the system is kind of integrated. We have good relationships with all our local communities, and we kind of maintain those relationships, and we help each other out, basically. So that is sort of the overall responsibility for the collection system, we call it. And then, like I said, we have 3 treatment plants. We've got Easterly, Westerly, and Southerly. Easterly is right on the lake there on Lakeshore Boulevard. Some of you may have seen it right near East 140th in Lakeshore. Westerly is over near Whiskey Island, in that vicinity. And then Southerly, if you drive along I-77, you can see Southerly on your left or right, depending on which way you're going on I-77. That's our biggest plant, and in fact, one of the biggest plants in the state of Ohio for wastewater treatment. Fun fact. Okay, and now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to talk about stormwater.
Thank you, Rick. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Jowett. I'm a senior watershed team leader with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. And today we're going to talk about stormwater and what is it and why is it important to manage. So if you want to click to the next slide. Stormwater is just simply rainwater and snowmelt, and this runs off all the hard surfaces and goes into our local sewers, whether it be a combined sewer or a separate sewer. Next slide. And so why is it important to manage stormwater? Well, we're going to get into that, and then we're going to do a little activity, and we're going to manage stormwater for a specific site. So next slide. So how many of you have been to the mall or a grocery store or Walmart, something, a large parking lot during a large rainstorm, and you see all of the rainwater falling down, and it's not soaking into that pavement, and it's simply flowing off into catch basins and taking that water off site somewhere. We've all seen that, right? And we've gotten really good at that. We've gotten good at taking that water away quickly and sending it someplace else. Well, in the natural environment, before we put down all these hard surfaces, it was completely different. And that, the landscape was more forested. We had wetlands and prairies, and it did a much better job of soaking in that water and not simply just sending that water away. So we've dramatically changed the landscape and the way stormwater behaves, if you will. Next slide. So this is our service area, and this shaded area represents impervious surfaces across our service area. So an impervious surface is a developed area that no longer allows that water to soak in or infiltrate into the ground as it would naturally. So we include parking lots, rooftops, driveways, streets, all of those hard surfaces that no longer allow that infiltration. So here we have 207 square miles of impervious surface across our service area. All right, next slide. And so what does that do to stormwater? Well, in the natural environment before we built out and we get some rainfall, about 50% of that would soak into the ground, either through shallow or deep infiltration. We also would have more plants and trees, and so they would absorb a lot of that water, and it'd be evaporated off into the atmosphere through evapotranspiration. So all we're left with is merely about 10% of that stormwater, again, that rainfall or snowmelt, flowing off the surface and making its way into our rivers and streams. So, what I like to say here is that for, millions, if not, millions or thousands of years, Mother Nature has designed her rivers and streams to handle 10% of that runoff. So they come to a nice balance, with erosion and flooding and everything. And so everything's fine. Then within the past 100 years, we start developing these surfaces, and we cut off rainwater's ability to soak into the ground because we put down all of these hard impervious surfaces. So we go from a 50% infiltration rate down to roughly a 15% infiltration rate. We cut down a lot of the trees and get rid of the plants, so we decrease stormwater's ability to be taken up by those plants and evaporated. So we decrease that evapotranspiration rate. And what happens is we have a greater increase of that runoff. So we go from a 10% runoff rate to a 55% runoff rate. And like I said, the Mother Nature had millions and thousands of years to, adjust these rivers and streams. And now they've had to adjust again with this increased runoff rate within the past 100 years. And when that happens, we see flooding and erosion issues take place. And on the built up area around Cleveland and the inner ring suburbs, we have what's called the combined sewer area. So this was cutting edge technology back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And so we had a sewer pipe, and that was cutting edge, but we only had one pipe. And so that pipe took the wastewater from our homes and from industry, and it got it away from it. It took it to the treatment plants once they were finally built. And then what we did is we decided to alleviate flooding and send stormwater into that same pipe. Well, there's limited capacity in any given pipe. And so if we got too much rainwater in that pipe, it had to go somewhere. And we didn't want that to, flood people's basements or blow out the wastewater treatment plant or flood the streets. So we had to incorporate these outlet points. If you want to do the next click. So every red dot here, 118 red dots, represents a combined sewer overflow location. So those are relief points in which when we get too much flow in the pipe and we lose capacity, it outlets into the environment. So you can see every river and stream within the combined sewer area has at least one outlet point to alleviate that flow and that pressure that's building up in the pipe. And that leads to bacteria and water quality issues throughout Northeast Ohio. And so here I want to just explain exactly what happened. So what's going on here is we have a dry weather day. It's not raining. The sun is shining. And so what you see here is wastewater coming from people's homes, anything that goes down your drain, not just your toilet, but when you wash dishes, you take a shower, that's all going into the same pipe. And it's going through the local pipe that's owned by the community and then down into our interceptors and then making its way to our wastewater treatment plant where it's treated and released as clean water back into the environment. Now, when we get a little bit of rainfall, we still have some capacity within the pipe. And so these smaller rainfall events, we can manage that extra flow of stormwater mixing with the wastewater and that sewage. And it's all being treated at the wastewater treatment plant and then put into the environment as clean water. But what happens is when we get that larger storm event and we're getting a lot more rainfall, I think we need to maybe click it one more time. We start to lose capacity in that pipe. And so you see here, this is where if we didn't have that regulator and that CSO combined sewer overflow location into the environment, the pipe would start backing up into people's basements, flooding out the streets and blowing out our wastewater treatment plant. So these combined sewer overflow locations were designed to protect the infrastructure and the general public from sewers backing up into their basement. But it leads to water quality issues in our rivers and streams and Lake Erie. So one more example here is I'm going to take you down into the sewers. All right. So here we're seeing a combined sewer. And during a nice sunny day, there's no rain, you can see it's traveling on its way to the wastewater treatment plant. And this little lip right here represents a weir wall. And so you can see there's excess capacity. And then when we have a little bit of rainfall, it's still all maintained within that pipe and making its way to the wastewater treatment plant. But those larger storm events is where we lose capacity. And that flow, that raw sewage, mixed with stormwater, jumps that weir wall and goes out into the environment. So that's when we have a combined sewer overflow event.
And I'll just say this is a regulator structure. This is what on the previous animation, this is what a regulator structure looks like. It's very relatively simple structure.
And so when that happens, you have all of that waste that's coming from your homes, from businesses, and it's being sent out into the environment. So here's an example of one of those CSOs going off. So this is the Mill Creek, this is the silo. And what you're seeing right there is rainwater mixed with raw sewage going into Mill Creek and eventually making its way out to Lake Erie. Pretty nasty stuff. And when that happens, who's ever been to the beach, been to Edgewater or Euclid Beach or Villa Angela, and you've seen these signs? Well, that's because the sewer district is monitoring the water quality at the beaches. And when we have a CSO event, when raw sewage goes out there, bacteria levels skyrocket, and it becomes unhealthy for us to go swim and get in the water. So the sewer district is combating that with Project Clean Lake. So we'll talk about that in a little bit and what Project Clean Lake's all about. So Project Clean Lake is a project that the sewer district entered into a consent decree with the US EPA, the Ohio EPA, and the Department of Justice to reduce the combined sewer overflows. So when the sewer district was created in 1972, you see that we had 9 billion gallons in annual CSO discharge. Now, we've done a lot of work since then, and we've cut that to half. So we're at 4.5 right now and an 82% capture rate. And there are other sewer authorities across the country that are even striving to get to where we are, but it's not good enough for us. And that's because we live on the shores of Lake Erie. You know, we live in one of the areas that have, you know, the largest concentrations of fresh water anywhere in the world. So we want to make sure that we are keeping that amenity and that asset for Northeast Ohio clean and pristine as possible. So through Project Clean Lake, we are going to bring down, we're going to increase the capture rate to a 98%. And that's going to be the highest capture rate in the country. And we're going to be just at 0.5 billion gallons a year. Sounds like a lot, but it's really not. I mean, on an average year, we'll have 0 to 4 overflows. And that's a big deal. So we're really proud of that, and we're working towards that right now. All right, so the bulk of the work, the real heavy lift, is coming from what we call gray infrastructure. So these are traditional tunnels and sewers and pipes. And these are massive tunnels that are underground, deep underground into the bedrock, 100, 200 feet below, and they are massive. And so what's going to happen is, if you saw that in that little cartoon that we had, instead of it jumping that weir wall and going out into the environment, when these tunnels are all online, that flow will still jump that weir wall, but instead of going out into the environment, it'll funnel down deep into these tunnels. And it'll fill up those tunnels until we have capacity to pump it out and properly treat it at one of our 3 wastewater treatment plants. And so here we have a really cool video just showing how these tunnels are created. So Rick, if you kind of want to describe what we're looking at here.
So this is the Doane Valley Tunnel. So that machine that's going in the ground there is a tunnel boring machine. It's usually generally around 300 feet long. So they have to go and they have to dig out a hole for the even to put the machine in. They have to tunnel to put the tunnel boring machine in. This machine is about 20 foot in diameter. This isn't even our biggest machine. This tunnel will be 17 feet. 18 feet in diameter finished. Our biggest tunnel that we are digging right now is 25 foot finished. But this is the workers bringing the tunnel boring machine head up to the front where it needs to go, and those cutters on the front face grinds against the rock and excavates the material and takes it out the boring machine, out the back of the boring machine. So this particular tunnel is was dug out of Ambler Park. It's actually already done. The Ambler Park is on MLK Boulevard in University Circle. If you've ever driven by there, you can see the big construction site that's been there for a few years. And this video was done by the contractors to kind of show how they get the machine up to the front.
And this is just absolutely amazing. And this is the finished product right here, where it's lined with concrete. And like I said, these are deep down underground. The Euclid Creek Tunnel actually went under Lake Erie for a portion. And this tunnel we're looking at right here is 24 feet in diameter. So when you think about that, I mean, you could drive a semi-truck through these tunnels. And it's just amazing. So this will be filled up with that CSO. So that's the combined sewer, where you have wastewater and stormwater mixing together. And instead of going out into the environment, it's going to go down in these tunnels, and then we'll pump it out to our wastewater treatment plants.
And then this is the back of the machine right here that I was talking about. It's 300 feet long. These are the gantries that ride along with the machine as it's digging in the tunnel, and it's building the tunnel within the machine behind and pushing it out the back of the machine with these segments, these pieces of concrete. So.
And so gray infrastructure is going to be doing the bulk of the work. But what we also have is green infrastructure. And that's simply allowing Mother Nature to do what she normally does before we developed this area. It's about infiltrating that water down into the native soils and keeping that stormwater from ever mixing with that sewage. And so we have 9 projects across the combined sewer area that are going to manage 18.5 million gallons of CSO just on their own. And so here's a project that we did over on Fleet Avenue. And so City of Cleveland was redoing Fleet Avenue, and they were going to be doing some work on the local sewers there. Now, again, the sewer district does not own those sewers on Fleet Avenue. That's the City of Cleveland. So we had to partner with them. And what we did there is, since they were already tearing up the street, we decided that, hey, here's an opportunity to capture all of that stormwater runoff from the street, keep it out of the combined sewer system. And so there were 3 vacant lots right here on Fleet Avenue. And so what we did is we went and we developed this green infrastructure site. And so this is an infiltration basin. And so we funnel all of the stormwater from Fleet Avenue and send it to this green area that simply allows that water to soak into the ground as it would naturally. And so this is keeping that water out of the combined sewer system, thus reducing combined sewer overflows. And it's important to mention that, you know, whenever we do these green infrastructure projects, we want these to be something that the community can be proud of, have it be an amenity to the neighborhood, if you will. So, you know, we reach out to the general public and the neighbors around there and make sure it's something that they want and something they can be proud of. And so here in this particular green infrastructure site, they chose the English garden look. So I think it looks fantastic. You can see here where it has filled up with water, and those plants are taking up that water and it's infiltrating into the soil down below. And so that's why it's important to manage stormwater on the combined sewer system side of things, you know, to reduce that mixing with raw sewage and the lack of capacity and sending it out into the environment. But even if we live in a separate sewered area, so as we built out from the City of Cleveland, we realized, okay, one pipe is not the best option. So now we have dedicated pipes for sanitary and then one for stormwater. And when we send that stormwater out, it also causes issues because we send it to our local rivers and streams. So the Regional Stormwater Management Program has the authority over the larger rivers and streams that drain 300 acres or more, just like on the wastewater side where we deal with the big sewer pipes and the communities deal with the smaller pipes. So here we are in the separate area. So instead of all of the water, the wastewater and the stormwater funneling into one pipe, now we have a dedicated pipe just for stormwater. So it takes all that runoff from the roof, from the road, and it puts it into a single pipe and it sends it out to the nearest body of water, usually a little river or stream or Lake Erie itself. But what happens? So again, we're sending more water at a much higher rate into our rivers and streams. So like I said before, these streams have to adjust, and they do that through flooding and erosion. And this is a chronic issue. This is Sheldon Road in Middleburg Heights. Abram Creek typically floods here. And so this is impassable. And this is a public health issue as well, because if you live on the other side of this, you can see that, yeah, there's a car right there that's stranded in the flooded waters. But then also if you live in one of these homes on the other side and you need an ambulance to get there, well, they can't pass here. So how much longer is it going to take for that ambulance to find another way to you? So this is a public health issue that needs to be addressed. And we're going to do that through the Regional Stormwater Management Program. Another way that streams try to balance themselves out and come to an equilibrium is through erosion. And this is one of my favorite examples here, because you have Mill Creek and there's a little meander or a bend that's coming around and it's just slamming into the bank or the side of the creek. And so it's eroding all of that soil away. And you have overhead utility lines that are being compromised. You have underground utilities that are flagged right there that are being compromised. And of course you have Warner Road that is also being threatened. So this is a big deal. And the sewer district came in here and we shored up that bank and we stabilized everything. But what you might be asking is, well, it's a problem in Garfield Heights. Why doesn't Garfield Heights simply solve that problem? Why does the sewer district need to come in? And I'll show you exactly why that is. Because we look at the problem, which is represented by that yellow star. That's where the problem is. But where is all of that water coming from? So if we travel upstream, you can see that water is coming from Maple Heights. It's coming from Cleveland. It's coming from Warrensville Heights, Highland Hills, Beachwater, Shaker, Pepper Pike. They're all contributing to this problem. So all of this development, all these hard surfaces are sending that water at a much quicker rate and higher volume into our rivers and streams. And it's presenting the problem right here in Garfield Heights. Garfield Heights can't go to Beechwood and say, hey, we got an erosion problem, you got to fix it. So it makes sense for a regional stormwater management program to come in and address this and make sure that we do it the right way and don't simply push the problem further downstream for somebody else to deal with. And we also have debris issues, maintenance issues. So this is a trash rack or a debris rack, and it's doing its job. It's capturing that debris, and it's keeping it out of a very large culvert that's just downstream that's off picture here. But we don't want all these logs and sticks getting stuck in that culvert. It'll damage the culvert. It'll cause flooding. But if we don't maintain this debris rack, we're going to have some erosion and flooding issues as well, because water will find its way around there. And it'll erode around the debris rack, and it'll cause flooding further upstream. So that's something that the sewer district is going to do in maintaining assets like this all across our service area. So there are four major components to the regional stormwater management program. One, we're conducting master plans. So we are ignoring the community boundaries, because water doesn't care. Our rivers and streams don't care if you live in Pepper Pike or the city of Cleveland. All right, so we want to look at the watershed as a whole more holistically and make sure that we identify these problems and come up with a solution. We're going to do inspection and maintenance, clear out these debris racks. We're going to construct projects that are going to solve the problems that are identified through master planning. And then here's a big one. We're going to encourage good practices. So what we want to see happen is stormwater managed on site and out of the system, whether it's the combined sewer system or it's the separate system. We want to have that stormwater soak into the ground as it would naturally and keep it out of the pipes. And so some of the ways that we do that is through stormwater control measures. And so there's a multitude of stormwater control measures that keep that water out of the pipes, like I said. So you have rain gardens, which are small landscape features where you kind of dig out the soil there. You put some amended soils that allow for good infiltration, and you put in some native plants. Disconnect the downspout, send that downspout to that rain garden. It'll fill up a little bit, the plants will take it up, and the soils will allow that to infiltrate down. We also have pervious pavement. And so this is a newer technology, and instead of having that huge parking lot where all that water is just ponding there and then going into the pipes, this technology will allow that water to soak through that pavement and then infiltrate down into the native soils below. So a lot of times you may not even know that you're standing on pervious pavement because it doesn't look that different. But you will notice on a rainy day when that water is simply going through and not standing on top. Then we also have cisterns and rain barrels, which is a way to capture some of that stormwater for use later. You can water your plants, you can wash your car, just keeping that water out of the system. We have bioretention, which is like a rain garden on steroids. So these are much bigger rain gardens, and they're capturing runoff usually from like a parking lot. And so it's still a traditional pavement, so it's all going to flow one place. But instead of putting it into a pipe, you allow it to go into this garden feature that has the amended soils and, again, those rain garden plants, and allow that water to soak in. And then we also have some basins and ponds, just, again, capturing that water and keeping it out of the system. One of the simplest ways that we can manage stormwater is simply disconnecting our downspout and allowing it to go into the lawn and soak in. So, if you look at your house or any buildings and you see a downspout coming down and it goes into the ground, that's where it is connected to the sewer. And so then that's going into the pipe, and that could lead to combined sewer overflows and also flooding and erosion issues. So what we want you to do is disconnect that downspout. Simply cut it and put a little elbow in here and send that water into the lawn or into a garden where it can soak into the ground naturally. So simply disconnecting and distributing that water onto the surface where it can soak into the ground.
So there's been an interesting side discussion going on here. Question period is exactly right. Rashia has asked, do pipes ever get clogged or malfunction?
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
Angela responded, yes, they get clogged up with dirt and debris. So she asks then, so do they clean them every month or so?
So yeah, we send Angela down in the pipes to clean them out. No, I'm just kidding. We have a dedicated maintenance staff on both the wastewater side and on the storm sewer side, where they have regular routes that they go and they inspect these spots, and they do have to clean them out. And then after a large storm event, they might hit these other spots where, yeah, they'll have to go in there and they'll use special equipment and remove those blockages and make sure they function properly.
So the next question is from Devin. I have a very interesting question. What if one day every pipe in the city got clogged or broke at the same time? What would happen?
Oh boy, that would be a bad one. That would be bad.
Well, the way that the system is designed to work, Gavin, is with relief, right? So as Jeff said before, there's got to be relief somewhere. Now, unfortunately, sometimes that relief means it's going in your basement. And that is a form of relief. It backs up, it can't go where it wanted to go. The water is going to just seek another place. And if there's enough pressure in those pipes, and if they are clogged up, they will seek the path of least resistance, right? The place it can go the easiest. And unfortunately, sometimes it's that direction. And that's why we have to keep a good maintenance of the system. We have to maintain the pipes. We have to make sure that the water has a place to go. And it's a 24/7, we never stop. Our maintenance crews are amazing. They're on call 24 hours a day. There are calls, about something comes in, there's a call, someone's got to go out, in the middle of the night sometimes. So it's a good question.
Right. And there's also maintenance crews that work for the various cities that are part of the district. A lot of the clogging and it tends to happen in the smaller pipes, which are owned and maintained by the cities.
Exactly right.
The cities do try to get around and clean them when they can.
Mm-hmm.
Some cities are more frequent at cleaning than others, but once every 5 years, once every 10 years is a good cleaning program.
Sure. Yep.
Rashia follows up with, she also says, if everything got plugged up, the place would get flooded. When bacteria goes into the water at the beaches, do they clean it out or do they leave it to clean itself?
That's a good question. Looks like Allison is giving an answer, but she's muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. People like it that way. But Rashia, I think generally, unfortunately, it is a matter of time for it to clean itself out. There's not a real good system for cleaning out that water. And that's where the sewer district for the beaches on Lake Erie, we will put out advisories or even put out signs discouraging people from going into the water right after a major rainstorm.
Good question.
Is the solution to pollution. Just give it time.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right.
And that's also why we're trying to prevent that from happening in the first place, right? So that we have a CSO, the Project Clean Lake program will hopefully prevent that from happening or make it much more rare, so that it really will have a very, very minimal impact on people's lives.
Right. And given enough time, the lake is pretty good at cleaning itself.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you for those questions, everybody. Anybody have any other questions? Or?
But the follow-on then is, so people are still allowed to swim.
Oh.
I think the answer really is if the concentrations of bacteria are relatively small, relatively low, yes. But when you see the advisories on the beach, it's probably a good idea to give it a day.
That's right.
Just that, they are advisories.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think they actually close the water or have anybody standing there to keep you out, but you're at your own risk then.
Right. Okay, thanks. Moving on.
Right. So, Jeff, you want to go into the next phase here?
Yeah, so now we have a little activity in which we're going to do as a group, and we're going to come up with a stormwater management plan for this site here. So here we have a random school here that has a lot of rooftop, that impervious surface that is all being piped into the sewer system. And so what we want to do here is we want to manage that stormwater and keep it out of the system. And so these little dots, they're numbered here. Those represent the different downspouts at this school. And so what we want to do is we want to select a stormwater control measure, or SCM, at these different downspouts so we can manage that stormwater and keep it out of the system. And now, every stormwater control measure is not created equally, if you will. I mean, there's cost associated with them. There's a different amount of capture in which they have. And then there's also maintenance. We always got to think about maintenance, because if these aren't properly maintained, they're not going to function well. And so, when you're designing this, you need to think about what your budget is, how much you want to capture, and then future maintenance needs. So, for example, a rain barrel is pretty low maintenance, but again, it's got to be drained after a rain event so that you have capacity to store the next rain event. A rain garden or a bioretention cell is going to be a lot more maintenance heavy, because you got to know what plants you have in there, and then what are weeds, so you can weed out the bad plants and keep the good plants there. If you're sending all of the water from a parking lot, you're going to get all that grit and grime that's coming from the cars that's going to go into your bioretention cell. So eventually, every couple of years, you might have to clean out that grit and grime that's going to mix with the soil. So there's some knowledge involved there, and some man hours needed to clean up these bioretention cells. So what we want to do here is, like I said, check out the stormwater control measures and figure out where we want to place them. And now the dirt, or the fancy way of calling it soil, they're not all created equal either. So, you have some soils that drain really well. Sand is really the best. And so that'll give you a better infiltration rate. So you want to kind of focus, infiltrating in where you have sand. On the other end of the spectrum, you have clay. Clay does not infiltrate very well. So you want to keep that in mind as you're doing this. What are the soils here? What's going to be the best practice to put with the soils while looking at cost, capture, and maintenance. So we're going to do this, as a group. Allison's gonna take the lead here, and we're gonna figure out if we can come up with a good stormwater management plan for this facility. So, Allison, you want to take over?
I will.
You want to explain this at all before we go into that, or don't you want to just?
So here represents the costs of all of the SCMs, the stormwater control measures. And so we have a maximum cost that we cannot exceed, as a group. We can't get above $7,500. But we also have a minimum capture score, or control score. So the control score kind of loosely represents gallons of water captured. So, 55-gallon rain barrel, that's how much you're going to be capturing. Parking lot gives you 1,800 gallons. But then we have that maintenance score, in which we cannot go above a 24 in that maintenance score. So as I talked about, bioretention in a parking lot is going to be really high. So that gives you an 8 on that maintenance score. But then that vegetative filter strip, simply disconnecting your downspout and allow it to go on your grass, is a relatively low maintenance score at only a 1. So we need to keep track of the cost, control score, and that maintenance score to come up with our stormwater master plan for this site.
We'll see how the afternoon group does compared to the morning. This morning we tried to get our controls as many as we could, and we got within $1 of our budget. But when we did that, it pushed our maintenance score 1 point too high. So we have a bit of a balancing act here. So quickly, I'm Allison Schreiber. I'm a project manager 3, which is essentially a senior project manager. Just a little background. I have been at the sewer district for 29 years and 6 months, and I have been an engineer for 37 years. So I started in 1983. So anyhow, here, I'll start to share the game screen, and I will move the pieces as you all tell me how you would like to build this. So first, if my mouse will cooperate, excuse me for a minute. Okay, I'll expand this screen. And I would say, let's try to move some of these stormwater control measures. Let's move at least 3 onto the board before I start to enter them into the score sheet. So think about the types of soils that are associated with each of the downspouts, and then look at these control measures and decide if they would be effective there. So I'm hoping that one of the students will make the first suggestion.
Allison, looks like we have some of the SCMs actually on the board. So maybe we could.
Oh, I apologize. Oh man, we're getting a head start here looking at, I forgot to clear this since the last session.
No cheating, guys. Don't look at that,
That's right. I think I got them up. We got one left over. Okay, thank you, Jeff. And as I'm having a little trouble seeing who's on, so I may not call you. There we go. So if somebody would like to
Allison, number 6.
number 6. Thank you, Rick.
Number 6 and number 12. And then-
Oh, 12 too, yeah.
And
Good eyes, Jeff.
We need a
Thank
reset
you.
button.
okay, I'm the oldest person on this. I'm the oldest person on this phone call, so I don't see it as well. Okay, so who would like to make the first move here? Do I
Since I
see?
don't know how to say her name, how about Fatima? You got an idea?
If you can enter it into the chat or turn your mic on and tell us. Either one.
Let's start with some trees.
Okay, was that Angela?
Yes, let's move some trees to, let's go to number 9.
Number 9. Okay, we will move a tree to number 9. Okay,
Remember, the goal here is to try to pick one of these things and put it near a downspout where you think you'll get the most bang for your buck. So something with maybe, a good score, a good water benefit, but maybe it's not as expensive, or maybe it doesn't have as much maintenance. And then keeping the soil type in mind, so something that's sandy, drains well. So certain things are draining well, and other things are, don't drain as well. So just a couple little hints there, but there's not really a wrong answer here. We're just going to try and see how things go, right? We're going to see what the effects of these different CMs are on our overall project.
Yeah, I was going to add that. Just throw out a thought. It doesn't have to be right or wrong. And once we calculate it, that's the whole point of engineering, is sort of trial and error. And this is when you want to do it, at the beginning stages, at the planning stages, because you can screw up now, but you really can't screw up later once you start digging holes. So
very good point, Bill. So if somebody has an idea, I'd like to get 3 more of these on here, or 2 more on before we go take our first look at the score sheet. And if no one volunteers, I'm going to pick someone, so help each other. Okay, the name, I see, Abigail, a rain barrel at 12. Okay, let's find a rain barrel. And I will tell you in advance, that's a very good item to put at number 12, because we have clay soil here, and the rain gardens and parking lot bioretention and pervious pavement would not be scored as well over there. Thank you. Okay, we need 1 more before we look at the score sheet for the first time. All right, I'm looking at the middle of the names, and I hope I say your name right. I am going to ask Nolvia for an idea. Oh, Patrick, parking lot bioretention to 1. I think we're going to like that choice. I think we have some good ideas here. So now we'll move on to the scoring sheet. And so we will now add the parking lot bioretention into the score sheet here. And that doesn't leave us a lot of budget, but it got us a lot of points in the control score. And then I'll look here, down at number 9, we have a tree pit. And our tree pit didn't cost us much money. It got us a little bit more of a control score. Right now we're within our budget, and we have actually already reached our minimum control score. But let's see at number 12, let's add our rain barrel and see if we can lower our control ratio. So we have our rain barrel. And wow, we are very close to the top of our budget. We have increased our minimum control, and we've reduced the cost, the control ratio. We haven't exceeded our maintenance budget. So would anybody like to maybe suggest?
And Allison, maybe you should explain. I don't know if we covered that in this session.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe just.
go ahead. You can, 'cause I'm not sure which part we didn't explain. So if you want to go.
The control ratio, what that means is basically you can think of it like how many dollars per gallon of treatment are we getting? That's the way to think of it. So the lower the better. So you want the cost per gallon of to be as low as possible. So the lower you can get that number, the better it is for the whole project, right? You're not spending as much money to get the same or better water quality effect and reduction to the water to the sewers.
So thank you, Rick. So to think of bringing our control ratio down, let's see if maybe, let's see what we have. There aren't many things here that are less expensive. In fact, the tree pit and the rain bower are both very inexpensive. We can get a little bit more control if maybe we add a few vegetated filter strips. We can try that if anybody would like to, or we can even move any of these things around. We can just, right now we have something that works, but usually communities or developers want a lower cost. So would anybody like to make any changes to this? I will pick, let's see. Who would like to call on the next student? Who wants to pick a name from our mentor group?
What about Devin? He was pretty involved in the chat. Devin, you have any ideas? I tried, Allison.
Okay.
Allison, before you go any further, I do want to point out some of the students at John Hay may actually walk across a GI spot right there as they cross the street from Stearns to get towards the school.
Oh.
Jeff, you want to share what that actually is over in that area? So perhaps maybe we can put that on our by our school.
Sure, and then we'll go back to Devin. He's ready to answer us after Jeff's explanation.
You were putting me on the spot, Angela. I'm not quite sure I know what you're referring to.
There is the median GI kind of vegetative strip that helps prevent traffic from hitting the students as they cross the street. Right.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm
right
sorry.
There at the Converge. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was one of our green infrastructure grant projects, and I apologize. Mm-hmm. I was somewhere else apparently, but yeah. So that's a real added benefit there, where we're managing stormwater and infiltrating that into the ground while still also protecting pedestrians as they're crossing the street. So that's why when I talked about our Fleet Avenue green infrastructure project, we want these to be amenities, not simply just for their stormwater management, but we also want to think about how we can improve the area. So we have this bioretention feature right here, which is certainly going to be an added amenity to the school. So that's something that we want to keep in mind too as we're picking these stormwater control measures. How will they improve the site?
Thank you. Okay, so Devin is back with us. Responding, Devin. We were wondering if you would like to either pick one of the inexpensive control measures, which I can pull up here. We only have $26 left to spend. So wondering if you might want to put a vegetated filter strip anywhere. That's only $16 and we'd get a few more control points. Or if you would like to swap out any of the control measures. We've met the main objectives already, but we want to see if we can do any better. And not to put all the pressure on Devin, if anyone.
Anyone.
In here, yeah.
And I want to just point out too is that it's important these scores and this control ratio, because you may be being scored by an entity for grant money or just to be awarded the project for design. So you have to compete with other consulting firms and other entities to get that money or get that job. So making it as best you can is very important in engineering.
You know what? I'll take a little.
That's
You can see the numbers.
Oh, yeah. I only showed that for a little while, Devin. So which part did you want to see? You want to see this map a little better?
He wants to know he wants to pick, yeah, there you go. Pick one of the nodes.
You probably can't see the soils very well.
How about 6?
Would you like to go to number 6? Let's try that. And I think we'll be happy with that choice. Number 6, we'll put our now I'm going back to the score sheet. And what happened here, that was a very good choice because it only cost us $16, but we increased our control score 117, but we also get a bonus because we put that in sand. So that has reduced our control ratio or our cost per unit controlled down below $3. So that gave us a big benefit for a low cost. And we are still within our budget and we still have not required too much maintenance. So that one little thing really helped us out with the overall cost ratio.
Great.
So if anybody, if any of the mentors would like to wrap up the exercise, or if any of the students have questions or, would like to say maybe what you got out of this exercise as far as your understanding, I'll open it to anybody.
I think that the students, maybe if they have questions, we'll give them a minute to ask any questions they might have about this. I mean, I know it's a lot to kind of digest, because when Jeff presented this game to us as mentors, I will say we all sort of were like, whoa, that's a lot to kind of figure out. And we've been through it a few times here, so I'm sure it's a lot of data to try to figure out. But like we said early on, there's no wrong answer per se. You kind of just figure out what sticks, see what the result is, and then if you're not quite happy with it, like for instance, if it were me, and if I were designing this, I would look at my other opportunities. Like I have 13 downspouts, and I'm not really doing anything at the other locations, which may be fine. I mean, we got there, right? But maybe, design is an iterative process. You go through it once, you see how it looks, and then maybe you go back and you refine again. So another way to look at it, you might want to go back and say, all right, that's a lot of money I'm investing all at one spot with the bioretention, which it worked. It did its job and it's fine. And who knows, maybe the school in this case doesn't want you to mess around with anywhere else in the property. There's other things like that will come into play. But if we were to spread out that $7,276, I'm not saying we're going to do this now, but I would probably play around with that and take that one off and see, what if I did vegetative filter strips everywhere? What does that do for me? Versus, something else. You can try different things like that. So I guess my point is just don't be afraid to try, see how things work. And then once you play with it a little bit, you get more familiar with it. You can also, see the benefits. So, yeah, look at that. We have $230. We got $7,000 to play with, right? So.
And when you're going through the design phase of any project, you usually have alternatives. So this is one alternative in which we have the bioretention cell, which has some added benefits because it's a very visual piece. It's an educational component, and maybe the school wants that. But then, as Rick said, maybe the alternative too is vegetative filter strips all around. What does that do? How much does that cost? What are the benefits and negatives, to those? So, usually you want a couple of different alternatives so you can look at it and figure out what makes the most sense for that particular project.
Yeah. See, actually, Allison's showing it now. If we just did vegetative filter strips everywhere, we probably wouldn't meet our minimum, right? 117 times 13. I don't know what that is, math. I'm not gonna do that math in my head.
700-800-ish.
Yeah. So it's not gonna do it. So but you can use that as a guide to help you figure these things out. So.
Sure. Oh, but I'm glad Rick brought up that point about what if you used all vegetative filter strips, because I went through and I just played around with this a bit, and I put the rain garden up here where there's a silt loam where we at least didn't lose points for it. It could have gone somewhere. Number 8, I probably could have picked something better. I probably should have moved that, but we're under our budget and we've reduced this cost. Remember when this ratio was above a 3? By using a lot of these vegetative filter strips, we're down below $1. On the other hand, though, we just barely exceeded what were allowed for maintenance.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I mean, and this is great because, and then here's a negative to this alternative, if you will. You lose the educational and the visibility component of that parking lot bioretention. So you got to think about everything, not merely just the cost and control score, but there oftentimes are other things that you need to look at, and you don't know what the school might want. They might want to have an outdoor classroom type place in which that bioretention, checks that box.
Right. One other quick point to make, and then I'll probably allow somebody else to share a screen. What we showed here in this example was one area that has all kinds of different soils. You generally won't be dealing with that on one specific project. You'll have one, maybe two soil types throughout the entire property. There are a lot of parts of the Northeast Ohio that don't have sand at all. So the pervious pavements won't work very well. The parking lot bioretentions won't work very well. So you'll be a little more limited in those areas. But where you're closer to Lake Erie in sandier areas, that's where some of these better control measures become more effective and more worthwhile. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
And I will quickly share, or Angela, do you want to share your screen if you have?
Sure.
Yeah, so we do have a quick assignment for everybody. I believe
just
part of the deal here.
Now that I said I want to share my screen, where did it go? Okay, let me see. I have to go this way. You can see all my mess. Okay. So we have an ACE assignment for you. It's just kind of giving you a quick overview of what we talked about today about the district and kind of what we're responsible for. We kind of, the form kind of gives some information about the urban water cycle and also in particular, a little blurb about careers. So take some time and read over that. And then we just have just a few questions. It shouldn't take you no more than about 10 minutes to answer. And we kind of went over it through the presentation. We've got some cool graphs and we've got some easy no-brainers in there as well. But I want to put, I put in the chat at the beginning, and I'll put it back in now, that you can find a lot of this information directly on our website at www.neorsd.org, as well as we have another website that we did for our open house festival this fall called www.cleanwaterfest.com. And on that website, we've got some cool videos and a lot of other information about the big tunnels and the sewers that you can walk through a sewer. You can actually go electrofishing with some of our WQIS folks, but it's just a lot of good information. And the one thing I just wanted to point out, and I know we've kind of talked a lot about our work, is that with the stormwater, and when we played around with it, just want to let you guys know, anybody who is building a new structure or is renovating a structure, whether it's a housing development or it's a new McDonald's or Wendy's, they all have to include these stormwater measures on the property. So this is something that if you're planning a design for something, you've got to include some of these concepts in your design. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you have any questions at all, we'll send this information over, and then we'll also send over the game so you can kind of play with it at your leisure. And if you have any questions, we'll send our contact information as well.
All right, great. Thanks, Angela. Yeah, so that's all we had. I'm happy that if anybody has any other questions about anything, whether anything we talked about today or anything about the sewer district, me and Allison and Charles wave. That's Charles. And Steve's not here, but we're all on the tunnel side of the house. So and there's people here from HR and planning and the plant side of the house, meaning all the treatment plants. John Dukowski is off video. John, let's see your pretty face. Is all we're all here. So if you have any other questions for the sewer district, John's being shy now. Feel free to throw them out there now. I got a couple minutes here.
I have a quick question for you, and maybe Bill, you can answer this. Remember the time, this was a couple years ago, when we had that big fall after during the winter, and we had a rain event at the same time, and the system got completely overwhelmed. Share what happened to our wastewater treatment plant, because a student did ask what happens if all the pipes break.
Sure. I don't know, Rick, if you want to take that one, but I know a little bit about what happened. It's not essentially that the pipes broke, but we do have system in place at the treatment plant, sort of fail safes, like we always call it, relief, right? So when you have 5 interceptors bringing you over 1 billion gallons of water, you need to have somewhere for it to go. Without getting into what really happened at the treatment plant, it was pretty much underwater. A lot of the facilities there were completely underwater. I wish I had a video I could pull up really quick, because it's really remarkable what happened. But there's a lot of different parts of the plants, and a lot of people overseeing a lot of different gates and valves and things. So it's really a big job to take that on. And if someone screws up, let's just say something really bad can happen. And on that day it did. So yeah, that's something we could share next ACE meeting. Maybe a little video of that would be neat.
Well, it does bring up a point. Bill has a great presentation to kind of walk us through Southerly Treatment Plant, and that was potentially on the agenda for today, but we opted for the stormwater idea. But we do have other opportunities to share information from the sewer district if people are interested, either via another one of these or in any other way. But like I said, reach out to any one of us. We can put our info if you need or have questions following this. I'll put my info in the chat right now. If anybody has any questions about anything they heard today or anything in the future, I'm happy to help.
Just to acknowledge him, wanted to let you all know John, who just put his face back on the screen. John was the wizard. John was the wizard who put the really slick scoring sheet together for today's game.
Spelling errors and all. Yes.
He fixed the Professor Schreiber found that.
Good. All right.
You're supposed to update the spelling errors before, but that's okay.
It's much more interesting when you leave the professor something to do.
That's right. On that note, though, folks, I know this is ACE, and it is more architecture, construction, engineering, but even in the engineering profession, it is very important to be able to communicate your ideas and to write correctly. And something. No, John, that's okay. That's why we're
to John again.
So you're not. If you don't like English, you're not completely off the hook in that regard. And like something as simple as writing a specification and leaving out the word "not" can change the meaning and cost you a lot of money later.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you very much, Rick and Angela and Allison and everybody else from the district that came over tonight. I think it was informative. I enjoy, this is what I do for a profession too, but I'm the guy that submits to the sewer district for approvals. Get one through. But it's interesting to hear, from this district side, how things work. And I think the game is a great idea. I think the kids will really love it.
That is Jeff's game, by the way. I gave John credit for the spreadsheet. Forgot to mention that Jeff made up the game.
Perfect. Okay. Students, remind you, if you haven't already done so, to go to acementor.org and get registered. That it's getting to be closer and closer to scholarship time. And if you're not registered, you can't get any scholarships. So please do that when you have the opportunity. Everybody, thanks again to the sewer district for participating. I know we had a couple of teachers on earlier. I'm sure that they'll be interested in seeing what happened with this too. And beyond that, we'll set this up again next week. Should be an interesting session talking about COVID and the effects COVID-19 has on some of our parts of the industry. So,
Good. All right, great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
good job, sewer district. See,
Thanks, Roger.
Thanks.
faces.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.